everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Join George. I'm George and I'm sat in the Purple Monster studio today, and this is our first live discussion with the aim of having monthly chats with a network of people who basically we just want to hear more from. So it's a very informal setup, so please do ask questions on the chat and we can answer them at any point. We don't want to talk at you for 25 minutes and then come to you at the end for just some Q&A. So we want to be able to have a conversation with you as we go along. Now, before I introduce my guest, I'd like to know who has joined the call. So I would love you to now type your name and where you're dialing in from today. So are you at home? Are you in the office? It's a Friday, so maybe you're in a coffee shop. So if you wouldn't mind just typing your name, where you're dialing in from today. I'm just going to lift my head and look at my monitor so I can see who we have. So hello George, glad to see you. That's from Anita. Hello Anita, nice to see you too. Hello, I'm Rian. She's dialing in from home in Leamington Spa, not far from us now. Happy Friday, George. Sophie from HDI Agency. Alan's in the office. He's given his support today. Robin's from home. Warwick, you are in Warwick. Nice to see you. Thank you very much, everybody. So it's my pleasure now to introduce our guest, Rob Geraghty, founder of Presenting Virtually. Hello, Rob.
Hi, George. Good morning to you.
Good morning. So we've got some sunshine today, haven't we, where we are?
Absolutely.
So, yes, it's nice, and it's a Friday. So everything feels good today. So thanks for joining me, Rob. This is our first webinar, as you know. So you and I have had a few conversations, and we've done our prep, which I think is very important when you're presenting virtually, as it would be if you were presenting face to face. So we'll come on to that shortly. But a little bit about you. You worked as a business consultant with a focus on learning and development. And then in 2008, you founded Presenting Virtually, which is over 15 years ago now. So, when we talked, I was very surprised that you were working in that virtual space well before the pandemic. So, did you want to tell us a little bit more about how all that came about?
Yeah, well, I guess I've always had an interest in technology and communication. You put those two things together, and that's what we're doing right now, isn't it? So, and I was working at Vodafone, and one of the things I discovered at Vodafone is I love giving presentations. So I used to represent Vodafone, go to conferences, industry conferences, and stand up there on the stage and give presentations. I love doing that, and I said, I wish I could do more of this and help more people give better presentations. So that led me leading Vodafone, setting up my own company. But then it was a very personal thing that I used to get work and fly around the world, and it was great and seemed great to everybody. But I also wanted to be at home. And that's where the idea of presenting virtually came from, because I realized that I could do a lot of the work without leaving home. So there was one particular gig that, everyone thought I'd landed it. I was at the Las Vegas in the Bellagio Hotel coaching speakers for their big important conference. And actually, all I wanted to do was be at home because my wife was 30 weeks pregnant with our second child. Hence Presenting Virtually was born.
Fantastic. And then I assume when we did have the pandemic, and of course we all had to start to understand how this virtual world worked, that I hope that for you that the business kind of blossomed then and kind of took a lead.
It was just a crazy time, the pandemic. There was, just so many people getting in touch, and people were just like, oh, you need to speak to Rob from Presenting Virtually, and it was a crazy time. And during the pandemic, during I think the first lockdown, we were running a couple of free webinars every week and getting 50 people attending every single session. Loads of people piling in, and LinkedIn was going crazy. So, it's been an interesting time ever since then. Yeah,
fantastic. So, one of the questions I want to ask about is the benefits of working virtually. Now, you've already touched on some of those. Of course, you don't have to leave home. So if you're are committed to your family, as many of us are, or any caring, responsibilities, and many other reasons why people don't like to leave home, So what are the other benefits, Rob, of presenting virtually?
Yeah, well, let's first of all give you the example of that family benefit. So on Tuesday of this week, my daughter, who's 7, in her school, they were inviting parents in to go and see the children's books. And I was able to go in, see my daughter's books, and come back and be home for a 3:00 kickoff session with a client. Now, again, you think of the non-virtual world, I'd have had to get in the car, driven away. There was no way I could have gone and done both of those. So there's a sort of family benefit, but let's think about the more commercial benefit of the fact that, again, pharmaceutical clients of ours, they've got clients all around the country. And now the national sales manager can go to a meeting in Aberdeen, and then he can also go to a meeting in Southampton within the same day. And again, that's just such a huge benefit. But what's really important is, do you know how to run a Teams meeting and do a virtual meeting and virtual presentation effectively? And from our experience, most people don't really know that well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just again, before we start into, a little bit more of, tips and things about how to better present virtually, just quickly, I know lots of people that still hate putting on their camera on a Teams call. They've still not got used to it. And lots of people have a fear of presenting. What could you say to people, just to be able to get over that fear in the first place?
Yeah, well, but again, the camera thing is a really interesting one, because you wouldn't walk into a meeting room and sort of hide behind a piece of paper. Or I once did this at an event where I was speaking on the stage. I went and stood behind the flip chart on the stage. And of course, the audience laughed, and it was crazy. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't present from behind the flip chart or a piece of paper. So, people are seeing us. And therefore, we've just got to get used to that. I think one of the things that really helps is now the ability, you can switch off yourself, because that is a bit weird, isn't it, George? Sort of seeing yourself back. When I'm actually in a room presenting, I don't have somebody holding a mirror right in front of me to, show me myself back. And so again, very simple thing that you can do in all the platforms now is switch off your own view, so that you don't have to look at yourself and you can focus on the audience.
Yeah, great tip. Because actually, I think when I speak to people about, I hate it, they just can't stop looking at that little corner. They go, that's me, that's me,
Yeah,
and that alone just distracts them from the
But
meeting,
this is me, this is me, and I can't change this. And, and I am feeling a bit hot today, and I am a bit worried. Have I gone all beetroot like I used to do when I was at school? But do you know what? I can't do anything about.
But you're a human, aren't you?
I can't do much about that. I'm human, and again, I'm just trying to be human. And and again, this is one of the things that I think we've lost in these virtual meetings, is we sort of think we have to be robotic and formulaic, and actually, no, we just need to be human and be real.
Yeah, and another thing yesterday, actually, one of our teams said that they find it difficult to build rapport online. And again, you and I have only met online, and we've smashed it. Now, again, you and I are used to this world. We're used to it. It's what we do, and it's actually what we really are passionate about. But again, I really do believe that you can build those relationships online. Like you say, Rob, you do just have to be human. You do have to just go, right, I'm just going to be myself, and it'll be okay. Yeah?
And one of the key ways that I encourage, can I just say one key way that I encourage people to do that is by showing their background, showing the real background here behind them. Because again, so many people are hiding behind the standard Teams background or the blur option. When actually, if I can see that you've got a guitar in the background, I say, oh, George, I see that you've got a guitar there. I worked with a guy the other day, had 5 guitars in the background. So it was an obvious thing for me to ask him about, but then it enabled him to open up and tell me a bit about his music. And again, it just formed a connection. So actually, just be careful, as what I'd say to the audience, of these virtual backgrounds that supposedly make us look more professional. They're actually sort of taking away our ability to have a connection with the audience.
Yeah, really good point. Again, they're just another barrier, aren't they? I'd actually quite like to ask the people on the call now, anyone got any thoughts around what background they use? Have they ever thought about changing their background? Just to kind of get some of the voices in the room. So please type away any thoughts on what background you use, whether you find it easy to connect with people in a virtual way, or whether you struggle with that, how you manage that. And while I give you some time to type that in, I'd like to ask Rob now. We've only got half an hour, less than that now, and there's a lot to cover. When I think about presenting virtually, the first things I think about, is eyeline. Yeah, so, we often see people presenting and they're looking, like you say, Rob, at the people, at the images of the people, which is down here or sometimes at the top. And of course, they're not looking down that lens, are they? So, eyeline, there's pace, there's tone of voice. And then, of course, the other thing is the content, death by PowerPoint. The other week, somebody had got 20 odd slides and I was like, oh God, before we've even started, I've sort of sunk down because I just can't bear the thought of having to to actually keep my energy levels and my engagement up for 20 slides. So just hold that thought while I see if anyone's got any stories for us. There's a couple on there. I always have my background on show, says Sophie. Just need to be aware of what's going on in the background and make sure you haven't got any pants on the error.
Yeah, I've worked with plenty of people who've got the laundry in the background again. So I am going to say the blur can be used at certain times, and this depends, doesn't it, George, about everyone's personal circumstances. I'm fortunate; I've got a dedicated room here that I've created for presenting virtually. If you are working, but sometimes, George, even like if you're working from your kid's bedroom, the other way, I was working with a lady, she was working from her kid's bedroom, she had the blur on. We got her to take the blur off, and then we saw all these trophies in the background. I said, oh, where are the trophies from? She then starts telling us that her son is 12, he's a UK chess champion for 12-year-olds. And again, it just brought a lighter moment where we connected and we talked about children. I've got a son who's 10, he's not into chess, but he can still beat me. Again, all of that just created a moment where we started to connect and feel that rapport that people were saying.
Yeah, and I just wanted to read out another comment here because it's contrasting. It's from Warwick. Warwick says, if I'm presenting with a group of presenters, it's always good to use the same background that references the topic being discussed so that we can all use that. And I think absolutely, Warwick, there's a time and a place for all of these things. And I think what Rob's saying, Rob, is that actually, again, when it is perhaps very formal, yes, those backgrounds will give that brand awareness, make everything look smooth and polished, which again is a lot of what we do here at Purple Monster. When we put on virtual events or meetings, we do them to a sort of a TV standard. But when Rob's talking about, those informal conversations, that's it. It's like, just be, isn't it? It's just about being yourself.
And George, really great example of that. University of London, I've been working with their careers team that are connecting with people who are overseas. They're in Pakistan, India, China. Now, when that team go online, they've all got beautiful backdrops with beautiful images of London that show the Shard and Big Ben in the background. Lovely. But that really represents their brand of their company of London. That's what they're selling to the potential students. So I think it totally works in that situation for them all to have consistent branded backgrounds that really tell their story.
Yeah. And Rob, what would you say, again, how can people manage that eye line that I just talked about, rather than, looking at people, which of course is our instinct. We want to be able to look at people in the eye and the face, of course, so we're drawn to them. But what is the skill, what is the technique that people can use?
Yeah, and I call it look down the camera, and it sounds very simple to do it, but again, and I'll just demonstrate while I'm on screen. What I see so many people do is do this, and they're talking to Mary, and then they're talking to George, and they're saying, Steve, what you need to do is this, but actually at the other end, that doesn't look like I'm talking at you. And the amazing thing that I find is when you look down the camera, if you ask everybody, put your hand up, do you feel as though I'm talking to you? And what you'll find is that everybody feels as though you're talking directly to them. You're giving them eye contact. And again, George, it's one of those things where actually the benefit of virtual is right now, everybody who's watching this feels as though I'm talking directly to them. Now, that could be 20 people, 200 people. If we were in a room together, well, I'd have looked over there at that side of the room, then I'd looked over there. So actually, virtually, by looking down the camera, you get even better value for money because everybody feels as though you're looking to them. But it is a skill that you've got to practice because naturally we want to look at the screen and look at the people.
Yeah. Again, practice, preparation. I think that's always good.
But the key thing not to do, which is what we see a lot of the time, is the people that present like this. They've got their slides over here on the second screen, sorry. And then they just present with their left ear. And again, it's those people who've got sort of no awareness of the camera that I think really matters. And what I encourage people to do is 80-20. So 80% of the time here on the camera, looking down the camera, then yes, I am looking down here to see how it's landing, what are reactions. But when I come back to the main message, I come back to the camera here and looking down the camera. Yeah,
lovely. And then, Rob, what would you say about PowerPoints? Because, of course, most online presentations we use PowerPoint. We would do it face to face, of course, as well. We'd have a screen and all the rest of it. So how do PowerPoint slides work best in a virtual way?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing, and go back to what you said before, George, you mentioned about somebody had mentioned 20 slides. Whatever
Yeah.
you do, never tell people how many slides you've got. Because, and I regularly run a session where in 90 minutes, listen to this, in 90 minutes, I show 87 slides. Now, if I tell you that, you go, oh my God,
Yeah,
that sounds
you've lost
awful. It's
me.
going to be horrible. Actually, it's really dynamic. There's lots of changes of slides. And that's one of the things that I actually think we need in a virtual world is the slides need to change more often to make it more interesting. Oh, look, there's something new. Oh, look, there's something new to look at. So actually, that can increase the number of slides. And I get really frustrated by these businesses, organizations where they give out rules and say, can you come and do this presentation? No more than 5 slides, no more than 8 slides, follow this template. So, good slides. And again, it's similar to the whole virtual presenting. No one's ever really been shown how to design a decent slide. There's that example I sent over, George. Should we have a look at that?
Yeah, let's have a look at that. There we go.
Yep. So this is very much what I would call a standard slide that I see average Joe produce. So what's it got? It's got a title, it's got some bullet points, got some words, and it's got some images in here. And most people say to me, it's not a great slide. However, if I say to people, go and produce the slides, show me one of your slides, this is pretty typical. What would you say, George? Pretty typical of what you see?
Yes, I would agree. Yes. Pictures,
And then,
information, bullets. They think they've kind of nailed it there, don't they?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then let's move forward. And this is a better version, similar content. So it's all about why you should come and work for us. And there's just 4 circles in here. The image is in the background here. Each one of these each one of these circles pops up one at a time. So I bring up best people, blah, 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 yada, 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 say what I want about that. And then the second point, great offices. And this is just so much easier to digest, but also there's some movement in here. So it's not putting everything on the screen all at once. It's bringing up point by point, using the animation to help you break down the information, to tell the story and make it more engaging for the audience.
Lovely. Thanks, Rob. I want to ask everyone on the call actually now. I joined a webinar on Teams recently where the presenter shared their slides full screen. And then, of course, I couldn't see the presenter. And actually, if that slide isn't engaging, then being able to see the presenter's facial expressions is really critical to keeping me engaged and focused. So, can we do that within Teams and Zoom? I know that we do that here at Purple Monster because, of course, we've got the setup for it, we've got the kit for it. But is it possible to be able to, share your slide and also share your face at the same time?
Yeah. But a couple of thoughts. One, you've got control of that as the presenter. So again, what I see so many presenters do virtually is almost before the meeting has started, right, let me get the slides on. I don't want that bit to go wrong. So you walk into the meeting and the slides are there already on the screen. But again, what do we need when we walk into the meeting? We need that connection time. There's a great phrase, connection before content. So again, just to have that moment before we start sharing anything, to connect with everybody, to talk to those people. And then, yes, share the slides, but then hopefully what you're presenting is going to lead to some thoughts, discussion. And at that stage, stop sharing slides. So you've got control over this. You can actually hit stop share, come back here where you can see everybody on the screen, and then you can have that conversation discussion. And then when we need the slide, okay, let's share again and get that back on here. So that's the first thought, George, is you can control some of that.
Yeah.
Just break it up, but then there's great
again, 3 or 4 slides in. Sorry, Rob, but again, just processing what you've said. Again, when you're planning your presentation, you plan those moments out, don't you? Again, back to the preparation. Right, okay, at slide 3, I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to drop the slides. I'm going to put my face back on the camera. Everyone can see me. We can have that moment. Back to the slides again. Sorry, I'm just repeating what you said, but processing it for myself.
But because we need to also hear back from our virtual audience. Again, this is what I see, and I get to poke my nose in lots of virtual presentations around the world in all sorts of different companies and industries. And oftentimes, what I see is they share the slides, they talk for 20 minutes, and then they say at the end, "Any questions?" And then that's it. And I say to the presenter, "How did it go?" And they say, "Well, I think it went okay." But they don't really know. So again, for me, what's really important is stopping, asking your audience, getting your audience involved, get your audience participating. And in a way, what I'm really advocating, George, is that people stop presenting in that old school present at, broadcast at. And I'm saying what we need to do now is have a conversation. And that might be a conversation that you're leading, that you've got some things to share, you've got some input, you've got some slides, but it's a conversation. So we need to stop. And this is a form of presenting that I call conversational presenting, which is very different to just standing at the front of the room talking and then saying any questions at the end.
Which actually brings me to now wanting to reach out to our audience and check in with them. And actually, Rob, when we spoke last week, you gave me a lovely little tip, which correct me if I'm wrong, it was first name first. Is that what you call it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So if I may, I'm gonna test that out now. So Rob and I spoke last week, and again, this was one of his tips around how to connect with your virtual audience. Of course, I can't see any of your faces, okay, but I can look up at my monitor here. So again, you're going to lose my eye line, but I've explained why. I'm looking at my monitor. I can see everyone's names, and I can say, actually, I would like to go to Sam. Okay, so Sam Pink. Sam, could you tell me a time when you've experienced, a really awful virtual presentation? Either maybe you've delivered one, I'm sure you haven't, or you've, one's been given and you've thought, oh, that was terrible. So Sam, I'm coming to you. Okay, so Rob said, of course, that this way we don't just put it out. People can't just go, oh, it's not really for me. It's not, I'm not part of this conversation. You sort of very deliberately, choose somebody and say, actually, could you answer this question for me? Again, I could say, Sophie, could you tell me a time when you've used too many slides? And what was your lesson that you learned from that? Again, I'm just trying to get people to engage, like we say, make these things a conversation. But again, rather than just putting it out there to everybody, using that name so that people go, okay, yeah, they're talking to me. They want me to respond to this. So, Rob, any other thoughts on the way we kind of do engage with people?
Yeah, I mean, but what you're doing, George, is great. The one thing I add in is sometimes I put in some filler content. So what I do is I'd say, Sophie, I'm going to come to you with this next question. What did you have for breakfast this morning? Now, that bit in the middle is just a bit of filler. So Sophie hears a name, because at that, when you hear your name, you go, oh, right, okay, I need to listen now. And then the filler content just gives people a bit of time to tune in, and then you go with the question. And look, and we're talking here about situations where you probably know the people in the room, as in they're your colleagues and things like that. The other thought that I had about using this technique is then how you can line up the next person. So the second micro skill that we teach on the back of that is queuing up the next person. So that's saying, George, I'm going to come to you with this question, and then Mary, I'd like to hear from you. And then just as you go to Mary, that's when you're going to say, Mary, let's come to you, and then we'll hear from Steve. So again, all of this is way better than the one and only technique that most presenters use when they're virtual, that they're trying to engage the audience. They say, any questions? Anybody? And they get nothing back. Because as you said before, George, it's thrown out to everybody but to nobody.
Yes, exactly.
And again, I'm not randomly picking on people. I'm just going to say, well, George, from an events point of view, what does this mean? Mark, from a marketing point of view, what does this mean? So we're going to go to the relevant people that we need to talk to, but using their names is so crucial. And don't just tag the name on the end, because there's no time to think about it. If I say, what's the best place to go this weekend? George.
Oh, me.
Not
yeah.
ready.
Oh, crikey.
Yeah, exactly.
First name first. That's what you call it, isn't
First name first, indeed.
First name first.
Yeah.
Now, I am going up to the monitor. We do have a question from Warwick. Warwick says, any tips on encouraging interaction? Here we go. Putting camera on, camera off. Okay, on mute. I'm hoping we've covered some of that when we talked about the slides, Warwick, when you'd map out when perhaps you'd have a moment to pause and what have you. So this is a typical issue that we face wherever we have a larger audience. Okay, so yeah, any other tips to give on that, Rob, that we haven't perhaps covered?
Well, I mean, one thing that's brilliant with a larger audience is using breakout rooms. And again, I see a lot of people who run training using breakout rooms, but not people who are running your everyday meeting. But again, why not? You've just presented the latest KPIs for your business out to the business. Well, why not get people into small groups of 4 people in breakout rooms to go and discuss what they've just heard? Just to go and chew it over. And the great thing about 4 people being in a group is people have to contribute. They have to be involved. So you need to be very clear on what the question is that you're giving them, but get them into breakout rooms, get them going discussing. And then when you come back from the breakout rooms, very easy to go around, say, look, let's not go around every single breakout room and have a massive report from each one. Let's go around each breakout room and hear what's the number one thing that you discussed. And again, we can get lots of that interaction. So in there, the interaction is actually happening in the breakout room. It's a great place to do it.
Yeah. We've got a question from Rian here. She says, I'm in performance marketing, so tend to be chart and KPI heavy. Guess also lots of buzzwords. So how do I make sure people understand what I'm talking about and the messages land well? So when you've got a lot of content, a lot of heavy content.
Storytelling with data. This is what we need to be doing, is telling stories with our data. And what I see again, George, and I've got loads of examples of it from loads of clients around the world, is they data dump. What they do is they just get the thing in Excel or the analytics from Google Analytics, and we just do a screenshot and dump it in there. And then for the business leaders looking at it at the other end, they haven't got a clue really what they're looking at. So again, we need to break it down, think about what's the story here. We need to pull out the key metrics that really matter, not just show them everything. Again, I worked with a client recently who had one slide with 247 data points on it, on one slide. And of course, when we pointed it out and said,
aren't you? Yeah.
Well, exactly, but again, we're not going to get it all. And I guess sometimes this is because what people are doing is they're producing a report in PowerPoint that needs to be sent on to people afterwards.
Yeah.
But that's a different beast to what I need to communicate now when I've got 20 minutes with the senior leadership team about what action they need to take. So very different presentation.
Oh, thanks, Rob. Right, we've got 2 minutes. Or maybe even less. So I am just going to throw out, if anyone does have a burning question that they'd like to ask Rob before we do wrap up, have we got any? So what have we got here? Alan says, in his experience, keeping the chat function lively, which everyone's done on here today, so thank you very much. That's a really great way to keep people engaged, of course. Again, without the face-to-face, this is our communication tool, isn't it? So, using this to its best is always helpful, I believe. Warwick Scott, I personally love breakout rooms, which you talked about, Rob. Always surprises me, at least with my company, as soon as you announce breakouts, you see the attendance level suddenly drop off. Oh dear. Well, is that not because they all go to their breakout rooms? Is that because all of a sudden they go to their rooms rather than staying in? I don't know. So what have we got here? Regarding PowerPoint, Sam says, I was told 5 points per slide is enough. Also, if you... we've got his head in his hands.
This is just such old school advice, again,
right.
And this is one of the things that annoys me with presentations. We have all this advice that's out there that's been there for 25 years of, tell them what you told them and tell them, or, something like this. And again, look, everything's moved on in life. Presentations have moved on. And no more than 5 bullet points with 5 words per slide. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is such old school advice. And so many people are still working with that. And, there's a course I run called Modern Presenting, which is about, getting people to do things in a far more engaging way, which is what we need to be doing. So, well,
it's certainly the way I would like to work. Purple Monster, we say we're not coming if it's not fun. So we attend lots of meetings with lots of companies, and you do sort of find yourself going, oh, well, they're a difficult bunch to crack, aren't they? Because people still can feel themselves very that word professional. Again, people still hold on to it in a different way than I would, and clearly perhaps a different way than you would, Rob. So I guess that's probably another conversation, isn't it? But
everything I'm talking about is still being ultra professional. It's just, it's learning some new skills. Most people, and I suspect most people dialing into this call have not been shown what are the skills to effectively run a virtual meeting or deliver a presentation virtually. And you've got some skills that, that helped you face to face, but it's slightly different. The rules of the game have changed slightly, and therefore there's a lot of tweaks that you need to make if you really want to become engaging virtually.
Absolutely. Rob, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you everyone for joining. You can find Rob Geraghty on LinkedIn, or I'm sure you've got a website presenting virtually. So by all means, drop it in the chat box for everyone, Rob. And we'll be doing another Join George in September. Going to take August off, so we'll hopefully see you all in September. Have a great day. Thanks, Rob.
Take care. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.